Math 3 students. Today we are going to go over polynomial division. All right, so there's kind of a couple of different methods that you use depending on what you're given. All right, so in this case we are doing 15x cubed plus 10x squared plus 5x minus 30 divided by 5. Okay, now since the thing we are dividing by is just one term, the division is actually quite easy. What you can do is then just divide each term by 5. It's pretty simple. So then you just end up with 3x cubed plus 2x squared plus x minus 6. That's all you got to do for something like that. All right, so here, all right, again, we are just dividing by a single term, so we're going to divide each term by the term we're dividing by. So we end up with 2y squared plus 7y minus 4. And again, this only works when you are dividing by a single term. The time this wouldn't work is, let's say we were dividing by x minus 3, okay? I couldn't do that because I have two terms there, okay? But with these ones, it's nice and easy. All right, so something like this. We've got negative 40z squared plus 40z, and we're going to divide every term by 5z. So we end up with negative 8z plus 8. Now this next one, while it's a little bit more complicated, we are still just dividing by a single term. This is one term. Even though there's multiple variables, I'm not like adding or subtracting anything else to it. So we can still use our snazzy little method here. And 3 divided by 3 is 1. We're left with an x cubed. Remember, when we divide things with powers, we do top minus bottom. So 4 minus 1 gives me 3. 4 minus 1 gives me 3 as well. And the 1 out in front, we don't necessarily have to write. Then we're going to do negative 12 divided by 3, and we get a negative 4, x squared, y squared. All right, so this one, again, we can go ahead and just divide these. Go ahead and pause the video and see if you can do this on your own. So we go ahead, divide each term by 2p squared. We end up with 7p to the third minus 5p squared. Super duper easy. It's very easy when, again, you only have one term. Now, when we get to something like this, all right, we are doing this guy divided by this guy. And if you notice, there's more than one term that we're dividing by, all right? Now, an easy way to go about doing this is something called synthetic division. And at first, it's going to seem kind of confusing and be like, what? Why are we doing this? But I promise you, this is the easiest way to do this. There's another method, which is just long division. And I can assure you, you're going to find this method much easier. So kind of just follow along, take the notes, and eventually you're going to be like, oh, okay, this isn't too bad. So the way that this works is you're going to go ahead and set this guy equal to 0 and solve. And we get 7. So we're going to take that and put that number there. Essentially what we do is we take the actual root. Then we're going to take the leading coefficients on all of the terms of this polynomial. Now, one thing that's incredibly important is that you have a number there for each descending term. So if we start with power of 4, we have to go like power of 4, power of 3, power of 2, power of 1, power of none. If we're missing a term where it's like 0x squared, or something like that, we still have to put a 0 in. We have to make sure we have a number there for each term. So in this case, when I write out my coefficients, I get 1, negative 11, 26, 10, and 28. Now, bear with me here. So the first thing you do is just drag this first coefficient down, and then you're going to multiply this guy with this guy. So I do 7 times 1, and I get 7. Then you're going to add down. I get negative 4. Then you're going to multiply this guy with this guy. I get negative 28. Again, we're going to add down. We get a negative 2. Multiply this guy with this guy. I get a negative 14. I add down. I get a negative 4. Again, I multiply this guy with this guy, and I get a negative 28. Now, this guy here is always your remainder, okay? If you have no remainder, for one thing, that means that this is, in fact, a factor, and we'll talk more about that later. And then it's just super easy to write your answer. These are going to be the coefficients on your resulting polynomial. So we have 1, negative 4, negative 2, negative 4. Oops. And we started with an x to the power of 4, okay? And when you're using synthetic, you're just going to go down by 1 power. So if we have an x to the power of 4, that means that our first coefficient is going to be an x to the power of 3, x to the power of 2, x, and then our constant. So this would be our answer there. Again, I recognize that this is probably scary looking, but you'll get the hang of it. All right, so let's go ahead and try another one. So again, we set this guy equal to 0. So our root is going to be 3. Then we take our leading coefficients, or I shouldn't say leading coefficients, just our coefficients, and we write them out. So we're going to do 2, negative 8, negative 3, 28, and negative 3. And of course, double check that you're not skipping any terms. We go 3, 4, 2, oh my God, 4, 3, 2, 1, none. So we can go ahead and start our synthetic division. We're going to drag the 2 down and multiply. 3 times 2, I get 6. Add it down, I get a negative 2. 3 times negative 2 gives me a negative 6. I get a negative 9. 3 times negative 9 gives me a negative 27. I add down, I get a 1. 3 times 1 gives me 3. I add down, and this guy again, this last number is my remainder. All right, so my answer is going to be one degree less than what I started with. So if I started with an x to the 4th, my first term is going to be an x cubed. Then I go x squared, x, and then my constant term. All right, let's do another one. So we're going to go ahead, set this guy equal to 0. Our root is 5. We take all of our coefficients here. So we're going to go 2, negative 9, negative 6, and 5. I don't skip any terms because I go 3, 2, 1, none. We drag the 2 down. We multiply. We add down. I do 5 times 1. I get 5. I add down. I multiply again. And I get my remainder of 0. Now again, your answer is going to be 1 less degree than what you started with. So I started with a cube, or a power of 3. So my answer is going to be squared, power of 2. So I'm going to do 2x squared plus 1x, or just x, minus 1. and I have no remainder. All right, let's go ahead and try this one here. So again, we're going to use synthetic division, which is what we've been doing. We take what we're dividing by and set it equal to 0. I get that x is equal to -4, so I'm going to put my root right there. And then I take my coefficients and put them in the box. So I'm going to do 4, 8, -27, 17, and -12. Then I drag this guy down. I get 4. I multiply and get a -16. I add down. I get a -8. I multiply. I get a 32. I add down. I get 5. I multiply. I get a -20. I add down. I get a -3. I multiply, and I get a +12. So again, I have no remainder. So I'm going to go ahead and do 4, and my answer is going to be power of 3. So my answer is going to be 4x cubed plus, minus 8, my bad, minus 8x squared plus 5x minus 3. All right, now let's go ahead. We're going to skip on over here. Let's do problem 70. All right. So again, we're going to be doing the same thing. And hopefully by now you're kind of getting the hang of it here. So if you think you can do it, go ahead and see if you can do the synthetic. Now I will say, when you do this problem, there's going to be a remainder. So this problem's a little bit different at the very end, but other than that, you should be able to hopefully get something close to the answer. So we set up our problem, and we just go and do our synthetic. Ooh, this is definitely a really tricky one, actually. Maybe this is a mean one to ask you guys to try. It's positive 20, right? So we get -2, and we get a +8, so then we get a -7. All right, so this one is actually very different. We have a 0 term, which is tricky, and we have a remainder. So this is a good example to do. Still, same rules still apply, where our answer is going to have one less degree than what we started with. So we're going to have 2x cubed. And this guy would be our squared term. And we would write it like, this would be kind of us writing it in descending order. Now, of course, the 0 term we don't have to write. Oops. So we could just skip it in our answer. Now, how do we write the remainder? What you're going to do is you're just going to do plus, and then you take your remainder, in this case it's -7, and you put it over what you divided by. So you're going to do -7 divided by x plus 4. And this is how you write your answer. Now, when you get a remainder, what that means is that this is not a factor of this polynomial here.